Stay tuned for tonight's adventure with the Fat Man.
Okay, here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is. I hope it's good to be where you are, because I'm really excited to be here today. My name is Baltimore Fats, and this is A Compass in a Square Walked into a Bar. Yeah! All right, have fun, guys. All right, so it's finally time to get back to my publisher's clearinghouse, where I've been looking into the men behind the minds that programmed and launched culture as we think of it today, which is directed by the arts and sciences. And it's easy to give the credit to the artists or the scientists or whatever the case may be, but who would they be without the people who published their work? What motives, if any, did these publishers have in either selecting or commissioning the works of these guys and promoting them the way that they did? It's these guys that give these guys their voice. And if you're trying to build a paradigm where all this culture enslaves our minds and that the history presented to reinforce this culture is as phony as a $3 bill, and just about every conspiracy you can think of works in a practical manner, well, these are the guys our presented history tells us could be capable of such a thing. Because they are the stewards of the most effective knowledge delivery system in the world prior to the 20th century. Books. Right? The warning not to believe everything you read exists because the written word, whether read or spoken, imprints itself on or in the brain, creating a memory that the brain likes to confuse with facts. These guys knew that, and more importantly, their bosses knew it too. And if you're trying to expand an empire, having an information dispensing mechanism that tricks the plebes into believing in or trusting the system you wish to put in place to enslave them, well, that comes in very handy, right? And keeping everybody close ensures that things go as smoothly as possible, especially under the watchful eye of the true power in the realm, the church. Regardless of the banner, Catholic or Protestant or Church of England or whatever, regardless of what it sits under, because the narrative gives us a fairly good picture of who was in charge. And so make of that what you will, but regardless, it's clear the information highway of the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries, at least in the English-speaking world, was run out of the neighborhood surrounding St. Paul's Cathedral. Right? And we've already taken a closer look at Kid Dynamite, Joseph Johnson, and the crazy influential Taylor family, among others. And believe me, there's more to come with Ozzy and George Robinson and the rest, but in this episode, it's all about the Murray family. Maybe. Right? The generations of Johns Murray, who ran their publishing empire for over 100 years. And with all of these influential publishers around, Kid Dynamite, the Taylors, Lackington, Rutledge, they were perhaps the most influential. They published everybody, from our boy Gordo to Magic and his buddy Walter Scott. They published Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. While Poe may have invented the detective story, Art over here perfected it. And he was a member of the Ghost Club too, right? So he's got that going for him as well. Right? So they also published Herman Melville, right? Cementing the concept of how futile it is to chase certain dreams in the form of a white whale. And on the lighter side of things, they published Jane Austen, showing both sense and sensibility. Right? And last but not least, they published our old friend Helmet Head. Right? And I think we all know what he had to say. And so this is just the tip of the iceberg, right? They published everybody. It's just incredible, right? So I had to know more. And so naturally, when I wanted to start looking into the John Murray Publishing House, I wanted to go right through Falcon's Maze, right? Which for them is the big kahuna John Murray the First. And of course, naturally, again, as soon as I started looking, the story started spiraling out of control. So before diving in to John Murray here, let's get some background on the name and where the Murrays came from, right? And so the name Murray is an abbreviation of the name MacMurray, itself just a variation on Murray, really, which has its origins in the Clan Murray, who not only hold the key, but are apparently ready to cut you if you don't go along with what they have to say, right? And they actually have their origin in Flanders.
Stupid Flanders.
With the Flemish knight Freskin, who was apparently hired by King David I of Scotland to secure the Pictish kingdom of Moray, who had just too much independence for King David I, I guess, right? And so when Freskin is through with this job, right? He and his heirs do the smart thing and intermarry with what's left of the local noble families. And they change their names to de Moravia, or of Moray, which evolves into Murray. And this Freskin, and I think it's interesting that his name isn't too far off from Free Skin, which is curious in a meat suit or even worm knight sort of context, right? But he's also the progenitor of the powerful and influential clans Sutherland and Douglas. And I'm sure we'll be hearing more from them before it's all said and done. Because I'm digressing, right? So the Murrays settle in as one of the premier clans of the Scottish Highlands who joined with William Wallace in the fight for Scottish independence. And they also married into the family of Robert the Bruce. And seeing that they were at Halidon Hill as well and control all of this land in northern Scotland and the Highlands, there's no doubt in my mind that they knew the flip-flopping Frasers and could be connected to Baltimore's McKims as well. And of course, all this has my fat senses tingling, which is my apophenia running wild, right? Because this branch of the Murrays went into publishing not too far from where the Macmillans would set up shop, right? And we have Macmillan connections in Baltimore. And so I don't know how closely connected these things are, but seeing how close things were running in London out of St. Paul's with its progressive pushing of radical politics and religion like Unitarianism, and how close these things are in Baltimore, it has my apophenia running wild. Like I said, my fat senses are going crazy over this. And so now that we've established the Murray name and how it could factor in, I found an unbelievable connection to the Murray name independent of my looking into the publishing Murrays that could prove to be an important cog in the machinery of social control. And that happened when I came across His Grace, John Murray, the 4th Duke of Atholl. And that's a story for another time. But the title of the Duke of Atholl is bestowed upon the clan chieftain. So he was the Chief Murray from 1774 until his death in 1830. And he was a Knight of the Thistle, a member of the Privy Council, so he had access to the king. And more importantly, he was, of course, a Fellow of the Royal Society. But sadly, the gatekeepers are quiet on how he earned that distinction. But what makes this so important, especially to Mud City, is that His Grace was also Grand Master of the ancient Grand Lodge of England from 1774 to 1881, and again from 1791 until 1812. So 28 combined years. Grand Master of the ancient Grand Lodge of England. In that span, he saw the empire through the American Revolution right up to the War of 1812. You know, what has Mud City been talking about almost this entire time? It's unbelievable. And this ancient Grand Lodge that he was the Grand Master of was one of two conflicting lodges in London that merged in 1813, just after His Grace resigned as Grand Master. So you know he was a very important part of the merging of these two grand lodges. And the other slightly older lodge was called the Premier Grand Lodge of England. And now, I found no genealogical connection between these publishing Murrays and His Grace the 4th Duke, because the trail stops with publishing John Murray the 1st. But you better believe my fat senses are going crazy over the possibility that they're related. Maybe they were cousins, I don't know, because they were certainly contemporaries, right? They lived at the same time and not far from each other. And who knows, in Mud City, they could even be the same man, which would really shore up the connections between the Freemasons and the goings-on around Paternoster Row and St. Paul's Churchyard. But just their names alone and their close proximity are enough for me here. At least through the John Murray Publishing House, anyway. And this connection between the Freemasons and the publishing around St. Paul's gets even tighter because the Premier Grand Lodge, with its 3 towers and weird weasel beasts and spelling errors, is formed on June 24th, 1717, when 4 existing lodges gathered at the Goose and Gridiron Ale House. Where? In St. Paul's Churchyard. Are you kidding me? If you're building a paradigm where the crown and the church are conspiring to control society through culture, and just think about the root word there for a moment in culture. Cult, right? And then finding out that the first official Freemasonic lodge in London is founded right in St. Paul's Churchyard, right? This can be no coincidence, especially if you put any credence in the power of Freemasonry, right? Conspiracy theorists and truth seekers have been have been on the Freemasons since the beginning. Right? It all comes together seamlessly right here in the shadows of St. Paul's Cathedral. It's just unbelievable. And this is the problem. Every time I turn around, the story pulls me in some crazy direction. I haven't even talked about publisher John Murray I at all. Right? And I've linked him to the Clan Murray and the Grand Masters of Freemasonry. Right? So we'll pick it up here once we continue. But before I close this one out, I just want to take a closer look at the seals of the two Grand Lodges in London, the Ancients and the Premier. And both of these things are strange. And so starting with the Ancients, of whom John Murray, 4th Duke of Atholl, was Grand Master, their seal looks like this. Unfortunately, this was as sharp as I could get this image for this. Right? It's got 2 leaves or fronds or something forming a shield or standard broken into quadrants, wherein we have what looks like a stylized line of the monarchy up in the upper left-hand corner here. Right? And then opposite that, there's what looks to be a bull. And down and to the left, we have what looks like a cross to me. And then to the right, there's an eagle-looking thing. It has the Ark of the Covenant above and is flanked by what at first glance I thought were harpies, but upon closer inspection, I don't know what these things are. Clearly female with the long hair and the breasts and the hourglass figure. But it's interesting that the wings they have as arms don't end with hands or talons. How are they supposed to pick anything up? Especially since their legs are goat legs with hooves. Right? Here's a closer look. And these cloven-hooved winged angels, I guess, are carrying a banner that's written in Hebrew. Hebrew! And I'll show what that means in a minute. But a very strange coat of arms for the Grand Lodge in London of free and accepted Masons, according to the old institutions. But it gets stranger still because this is just a variation. Right? I found this version that changes things drastically. Gone are these shapely ladies in the circular shield, and in their place are some fugly dudes with 4-packs and a quatrefoil pattern in its place. But at least the totems are more legible here, with the royal lion and the bull on top, and it's not a cross, but a man with his arms up, either trying not to get shot or his team just scored a touchdown. I find this posture or position very interesting. And then to the right of him, redefining what it means to be spread eagle, we have the more familiar Masonic eagle figure. And I looked into the possible meanings behind these symbols a little bit, but not enough to get into here because the gatekeepers were giving me the runaround. But I found one blog post that said that they corresponded to the cardinal points of astrology, and that at least 3 of them are constellations that could be seen year-round. Right? I need to do more digging on this because that's very interesting, and it could play an important part in Mud City's flood myth. I don't know. Also interesting about this version is how the Ark of the Covenant appears to have been changed from its allegedly more traditional look with the winged angels whose wings are touching, a la Raiders of the Lost Ark, to kneeling figures with horns. Right? But when I blow it up, it does look more like wings, right? So that's kind of interesting too. The deception there, from, the smaller looking image really changes how you see it. And then finally, there's the English translation of the Hebrew banner, and it reads, Holiness to the Lord. Not that great. A little disappointing there, but a fantastic seal regardless, and one I'm sure we'll see again. All right, so now let's take a look at the Premier Grand Lodge's seal, with its gnarly weasels, because what else could these things be? Right? Or stoats, as they're called in the UK. You want to talk about an apropos animal to have on a free Masonic seal. It's hard to get more apropos than the weasel. And look at this variation. What's up with their tails? Right? They have bullocks for tails. Putting them side by side, we learn the origin of the banner in Latin and then English. Relief and truth. This is where they had their typo, or maybe the I before E rule wasn't in effect. They hadn't cranked out enough dictionaries yet in the 1720s, I guess. And I couldn't identify this bird, which is unfortunate, but it looks like a North American blue jay or cardinal maybe, which could in some way tie the 2 seals together. Right? The only thing that I actually know about this bird is that both these weasels want to eat it. Bad, right? There's some hungry weasels. You want to eat that bird, weasels? And so to close it out on this seal, right, we have the nautical divider, which I also find very interesting. I don't know how it's used, but but they show them being used by ship captains and navigators in movies and TV all the time. Right? So this is very interesting, and another callback to the Seal of the Ancients, with its shield holding the cardinal directions. Again, very interesting, the connections between these seals. And to close it out on them, they have the 3 towers. Towers like we see all over the place, but especially in places like the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, who also have the divider in this insignia. That's crazy because Mud City charges them with a good portion of the recovery operations here in North America. It is just unbelievable how floody this episode is getting, right? I love it. Because I love that this is a callback to the very beginning of the show. Right? That's amazing. So anyway, and so to close things out on the premier Grand Lodge, as stated, they were officially launched on St. John the Baptist Day, who I'm sure gave them a big dunking on the 24th of June, 1717. But they actually had their origins in the, where else, but in the Worshipful Company of Masons, which is ranked 30th in the order of precedence of the 110 companies. Natch, right? 30 and 110, you get your Masonic 33 right there. And they were granted their shield in 1472, but were founded 96 years earlier in 1376. And considering some of the dates they give us on some of these massive cathedrals in England, you know there were organized Masons before this, if the presented timeline holds any merit. Right? So I guess I have time to close this one out with a Duke of Atholl-sized cherry. And as I said, I came about him independently of my digging into the publishing Johns Murray. And that happened when I found this map of Jerusalem, frame and all, sitting out as trash on a Baltimore City sidewalk. It was actually leaning against an old converted church building, like whatever was occupying that church now. And I believe it's a daycare, if I'm not mistaken. But they were getting rid of, I guess, old church belongings, and this map was just leaning against the wall. So what this is it's a 16th century map of what Jerusalem allegedly looked like in the time of Christ. And it's amazing, and believe me, it's in my slush pile of videos I'd love to make someday, so hopefully I'll get to it, But on this map, there are a lot of double-headed eagle motifs, like they have all over the theatrum here. And that was very curious to me. I wanted to know, how accurate was that? I understood the double-headed eagle in the 1500s, but was that a common symbol in the alleged time of Christ? And so I went looking, and sure enough, it dates back to the Bronze Age, so it's been around a while. But it was while I was looking for this answer that I found this article about the symbolism of the double-headed eagle, and it mentions the union of the 2 Grand Lodges of London. And so, diligently following up on that, I found this article that handed His Grace to me on a silver platter. I may have never found this connection between the Grand Lodges and the Murrays and the shenanigans going on around St. Paul's Cathedral were it not for finding this map. And that's what I call serendipity. And as I said, one day I do hope to do a video about this map because it really is amazing. I'm going to wrap this one up here, and we're going to pick it up with the publishers, Johns Murray, and a whole lot more in the next deluge-drenched episode. Remember, guys, just because you don't know the truth doesn't mean you can't have fun with the lies, right? So until the next one, cheers.